Grab a seat. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm going to move closer. I'm just going to throw off the camera, and I'm so sorry about that, but apparently not sorry enough to stop, so. Oh. There you go. Well, good morning, everybody. If you don't know me, my name's Derek. I'm the lead pastor here at Riverside. And I was talking to the men's ministry team here at Quest and just decided that hearing me once a week was not enough. You need more Derek in your life. No, what really happened was Clay and Brad just kept asking me, and I kept on feeling bad that you would have to hear me probably more than once a week. And so finally Clay was like, dude, just do it. I'm like, fine. Not that I'm sad to be here, not that I didn't want to be here, but anyways, that's for me to work out on my own. But I'm glad to be here with you this morning. Brad, when I reached out to him, when I eventually caved, I said, well, what would you like me to speak about? And just for future reference, if you're ever asking someone to speak at something, the worst thing you can say to them is, whatever you want. Because this is a big book, all right? And you're also assuming some pretty significant liabilities by saying whatever you want. It's like, I've been in Revelations a lot over the last little while. I want to talk about the Antichrist this morning. No. That'll be another day. We won't have the camera here for that one. But so I asked, what do you want me to talk about? And he very graciously did not say whatever you want to talk about, which I appreciated. And he said, you could talk about what it's been like over the last year as I've made this transition to being lead pastor. I said, okay. He said, you could talk about something that you think the Lord's put on your heart over the last little while. I said, okay. Maybe you can talk about something about sort of the future, where the church is going. I said, okay. And I decided that I do what I want, and I decided not to decide, so we're just going to do all three. And, and the Lord will make beauty from our ashes. No, it has been an interesting year. It's been an interesting year. So if you don't know, in September, that is when I became the lead pastor here at Riverside. My story is that I'm kind of attending the same church in a weird way that I have been since I was 5 years old, which is like every time I tell someone that, especially some of my pastoral brothers and sisters from the States, they're like, what? Because it's like 5-year rotations seemingly in a lot of those churches, but that's okay. I'm not saying this is the right way. It's just the way it happened for me. So I grew up going to Northside. My mom came back to the church because she had me, and you can read into that what you will. And went to Northside, Riverside. This church was a plant out of Northside. We're basically a whole campus, the Port Coquitlam campus, ended up being a church plant to create Riverside here. And I stayed here at Riverside and served as a youth pastor, served as an associate, served as the executive pastor. And then Pastor Terry and Pastor Ingrid and my wife Amber and I started talking about a year before this last September about what a transition plan would look like. And so I really felt coming into this that like we talked about pretty much everything there was to talk about. We've been working together for a long time. I love this church. I mean, I've got Sunday school teachers here that still come to this church, which is just a wild ride for me, and they're probably tired of me mentioning that. And I had a lot of people ask me, like, what do you think is going to be, like, the challenge? What do you think is going to be the biggest thing where you have to learn, where you have to grow, whatever? And I was like, you know what? It's probably going to be hard on, like, the people that I'm working with in the church. It's a big change. Anytime someone changes, like, because I'm different from Terry. And I didn't say good or bad, it's just different. And that'll take some adjustment, right? And I said, maybe for the church, because, Terry and I are different. And so the way that I talk about things is different. The way that I am is different. And I said, and we're having all these conversations about it, praying about it, thinking about it. And, no one else is to this degree. And I said, so that's probably going to be where the biggest change lies. But I got to tell you, it's turned out that the biggest change has been in me. Over the last however many months we are now, 6 months, 7 months, I stopped counting for my own mental health a little while ago. And it's been really, really good. But there's been some things that have just been really like confirmed for me in a lot of the way that God has set me up, wired me up. So one of the things we just talked about the election, we're going to be referencing it tomorrow in church. We're just be encouraging people to vote. We are a apolitical church. If you're looking for us to invite political candidates to come and take a Sunday and talk about their platforms, we can talk about that later, but that's just not going to manifest here in the foreseeable future. But the thing is I was sitting there, and a couple weeks ago, Pastor Terry came to me and said, "Hey, are you planning on mentioning the election?" And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, it's really important." I'm like, "Of course it's important. Like, it's the election." And he's like, "Well, maybe we should talk about it at church." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Like, but my problem is, it's not that I don't care. I care deeply. I care deeply about, participating in our communities. I think that we have a commission as Christians to support the leadership over us and to participate in the community around us intentionally and passionately. I really do believe that's a commission we have from the Bible. But because that's a commission we have from the Bible, I'm just keep moving. I'm okay, like we should all vote. Everyone votes, right? And stats would tell us otherwise, of course. But, they mentioned that, and I'm like, oh, and I just had to say to the staff, like last week, hey, if you feel like I'm not paying attention to something that's happening, around us, just point it out. Because it's not that I don't care. I'm just so future orientated that I probably processed that about 8 months ago. It did my praying about it, and I just kind of, as we all do, assume everybody else is doing the same thing. Of course, everybody's been praying about the election for the last 8 months, and I'm ready to move on. So I said, if you see me like I'm missing it, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Someone's going to have to wave at me and say, hey, we should talk about this. And so of course we're going to. Of course we're going to talk about the election tomorrow. We're going to pray about it as a church together. But that's just a wiring thing, and that's getting worse. It's not getting better over time. And I think I'm okay with that as long as I continue to humble myself before the team that we have in the Lord in order to point out things when I'm missing them. But that's not the biggest realization that I've had. One of the biggest wiring realizations I've had is that if I don't know what the point of something is, you have lost me. If I don't know what the point of something is, I'm out. And I cannot participate. It's like kryptonite for me. I can be sitting watching it being like, oh man, I should be doing this because everyone else is doing this. But if I don't know what the point is, I'm out, which is really weird because growing up, I was raised by a school teacher and a police officer. Rules were a big part of my life, okay? I was raised in a house of rules. And especially as a child, I had no problems with that. I mean, rules is what separates us from the animals, okay? So I was on board with it, but then there was these weird pockets of my life where I seemingly had total disregard for the rules. And I could not reconcile those things. And my parents had so many frustrating conversations with me with what are you doing? And I'd be like, yeah, I know it doesn't make sense, right? But I'm going to keep doing it, so I don't know. And so a good example of this is school. So I had planning class. Anyone younger than me, do we still do planning class in school? Yeah? I'm so sorry. I think the goal was to be meaningful and helpful, but it was the biggest waste of time in my school. Yeah, okay, I see that encouraging nod. Thank you. Biggest waste of time, and I had the worst teachers. And so I would regularly be asked to leave the class and go to the principal's office in high school, right? And I'm not that guy. So the first time the principal was like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "Oh, I got kicked out of planning class." Because we would just we would get there and they put another video in about don't smoke. And I'm like, look, if we didn't get it in the first 4 videos, then we're not going to stop smoking. And not that I was smoking, but we're not doing that because we don't think it's going to hurt us. We just think we're never going to die. So it doesn't matter if you tell us it's bad for our health 60 years from now, we're going to live forever. So we just stopped watching these videos. And she's like, I don't like your attitude, get out of the class. I'm like, that's what I wanted anyway. And I would just leave. And the principal started to be like, look, Derek, can you just work on something else in the class and not just speak up? I'm like, you know what? I wish I could, but I can't. And there's just something in me. I can't follow the rules. I was in grade 10 most acutely. Also in grade 10 is where I skipped half of the second semester of school. There's a couple mitigating factors there. One was there was a girl that had a different off class than I did, and I decided to correct that situation by just not going to class for that off period. Secondly, my good friend Andrew Lowers, who is a member of this church, came to me one day and said, hey, skip class with me. And I was like, no. And he said, but she's going to be there. And I was like, let's go. And then I was an A sometimes B student. And you know what happened after I started skipping half of that semester? I was still an A, sometimes B student. And so I was like, wait a second, I don't need to be here. Like, there's no point to me being in class. I already know all this material. I'm out. And I just checked out. And, that was a source of like guilt for me sometimes because it really hurt my mom deeply 15 years ago when I shared that with the church and she realized for the first time I was skipping all those classes and she never knew. But if I don't see the point, I'm out. Conversely, if I see the point, I am in. Like I have dug countless trenches in the heat of Costa Rica, in the middle of the jungle after hiking in for a day and like putting up with all the discomfort and bugs and sleep on the floor of a schoolhouse that the walls aren't complete and all these things. And I will do that with a smile on my face if I understand the point of it. But if ever it gets off the point, I can't even do the simplest task. I mean, I helped trench out a trench in the boulevard of the church this last fall. I'm not doing that to get an attaboy. I'm just saying that when they said, hey, we need to get this done because the church needs to do this so the city will be happier, I'm like, I'm in. Like, where are the shovels? Let's just dig a trench. And I did a terrible job of it and blistered my hands and everything like that. But I was in, no problems, because I understand the point of the thing. And I think this is a really important realization for me because I used to have this, like I said, a really uncomfortable relationship with like this. Why am I so obstinate sometimes? But I realized I really do need to know what the point is. And this shouldn't surprise you because we're at church, but I realize this has massive implications for the ways in which I've moved in and out of passionate engagement with my faith. Is that if I wasn't clear what the point was, then I was out. Or if I thought the point was something and I felt like I was already reaching that bar, then everything else, I'm out. I'm going to go do something else. If the point is just to be in heaven when I die, give me what that low bar is, I'll hit that bar, and then I'm out. I'm going to do my own thing. It's the whole, when I'm going to die, I'll just ask for forgiveness just before I die, and then I'm going to get into heaven, because that's the point, right? So we talk about being a Christian, what it means to be a Christian. I feel like this is a really big part of the conversation, and one that I'm really interested in having, and we will be having as a church as well. But I want to ask a question first. So at your tables, and if you have a small table, you can collapse your tables into other tables or whatever you want to do, unless you guys want to have an intimate chat, whatever that looks like. I want to ask you a question, okay? So the question is, what's the point of being a Christian? All right? This is not a rhetorical question. I'm literally giving you 5 minutes to talk about it, and then I'm going to ask you for your answers, okay? And I would like you to come to some sort of consensus at your table, which will be its own struggle in itself. And you only have 5 minutes, so if you have a pastor or a retired pastor at the table, if you have to gong them, okay? Only give them like 30 seconds to speak. And so 5 minutes, we're going to come back together. I want you to tell me what the point of being a Christian is. On your mark, get set, go. Somebody hit me with, and you're going to have to just speak loudly, because I'm not going to walk around with the microphone. I'm just going to tell it how it is. Somebody hit me. What's the point of being a Christian? Yeah, Sam. Saving souls. Cool. Great answer. Anybody else? What's the point of being a Christian? Yes, Brad.
Our consensus was a journey with the creator of the universe to walk intimately with him and invite others along on the ride.
Okay. Was that the consensus at the table? Okay, I just want to check. I'm not saying anything. I just, yeah. Mostly we got there in the end. No, that's good. That was good. That was very eloquent. Yes. Okay, this table here.
I heard something cool today. That we have a
Shh.
partnership with God. That means that we are part of the same ship and be able to influence our world.
Cool. Love it.
I like that.
Yeah. Anyone else? What's the point of being a Christian? Yeah, back row there.
We came up with the highlight of to live our lives the way God intended.
Live our lives the way God intended. Okay, cool. You have another one. Yeah, go for it, Sam.
So, I've noticed that there's a lot of evil and bad in the world, and as a Christian or as a follower of Christ, I feel that you are, I wouldn't say obligated, but I would say you have a purpose to share the love of Christ with others, and
Love it.
and to let people know that there's like a solution and there's a
Come on.
there's a king who
Come on.
can, yeah, to, because it's not just all bad. Like,
Yeah. That's a good word. Anybody hear that? Good. I mean, that got less confident the further back in the room we got with that answer. But no, it's a good answer. That there's evil in the world, and there's a king, and there is good as well. And I think that's a message people need to hear. Well, we're not going to answer that question necessarily this morning, but I asked that question for a purpose. And I asked that question because it can sometimes be difficult to arrive at a consensus, like a concise consensus of what that means. And we have to use kind of big language, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because God is a big God. But it can be like if I was to say, okay, we all in this room need to agree on a one sentence, like short form answer of what the point of being a Christian is, it would take a little while. We might need more than 5 minutes to talk about that. And it's interesting because, like, never mind the fact that, I want to know what the point is personally in a really focused way. We'll talk about why in a minute here. But just to kind of arrive at a consensus, and these are all good answers. They're all good answers. And all of them are saying the same things, but it can be a little bit kind of all over the place. Because if you were in church for a while, you kind of get the picture that the point of being Christian is a bunch of things, right? Point of being Christian is like, yeah, you do get to be in heaven with the Lord for forever, okay? That's a good thing. We don't want to treat that like a carrot for like behavioral modification, but it's a good thing. We can aim for that. Nothing wrong with that. And then we kind of one of these things, men's things, and we say, okay, as a Christian, part of the point is being a good father, being a good husband, being a good coworker, colleague, friend, neighbor. Yes, all those things are true. Part of being a Christian, what's the point of being a Christian? To live a righteous and holy life. Point of being a Christian is to bring other people to Jesus. Point of being a Christian is to bring good news, that there is good news to bring to the world. I mean, there's all these points. And I'm not great with maps, but if you have 16 points that you need to get to on a map, chances are you might not get anywhere very quickly. And it can be challenging. I think this has been one of the struggles for me at various points in my Christian walk is I haven't always been really honed in on what the point is. I want to read to you from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24, because to me this really drives home how important this conversation is. So if you're not familiar with the Bible, 1 Corinthians is written to the church in Corinth. Corinth is a Roman city. It's a city with a lot of history. It's a city with a lot of religious beliefs. There were some significant temples to the pantheon of gods in Corinth. I believe it was Athena had a temple in Corinth. And this is a stage in which Rome is connecting the entire known world. And Rome was great at importing and exporting both goods and religious beliefs. I mean, they had periods of time where it was emperor worship and the pantheon and the local religious beliefs of people from around. And they were just mashing these things all into one sort of bowl. And then Christianity hits the scene, and people are genuinely becoming Christians, acknowledging Jesus as the Lord of their lives. But they're approaching this a lot of the same way they approach everything else, was just that they're going to bolt Christianity to the side of their life. They're just going to add this to everything else that they're doing, and it's not going well. There are some things, you read the book of Corinthians, that Paul's like, you're doing a really good job of this. But there's some other things that's just like, I can't believe I have to tell you, you shouldn't do that. But it's because they're blending everything together. And if you read the book of Corinthians, it is some wild stuff, okay? Things I've never had to talk to someone about in church before, like you can't marry your mom. It's like a conversation they had to have. And that's like, well, it's a weird one to have with a church in a letter. And spoiler alert, there's a 2 Corinthians, so it doesn't all take first time round. They have to circle back. But one of the interesting things that's happening is that because the Corinthians had all these religious beliefs, because Rome had all these religious beliefs, anytime you have a pantheon, and this is true, I shared a while ago of like my experience in India, interacting with like the Hindu faith, anytime there's multiple things you're trying to do, you have to become like a legal expert at maneuvering the religious system. Because, okay, I can't keep everyone perfectly happy all the time, so what are the gods that I need on my side? I'll also do a sacrifice to this one. I'll do this to keep that one happy. This is kind of going to tick off that one, but that's okay because I'm going to circle back around. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. And as soon as I've checked all those boxes, I'm just going to carry on with my day because ultimately doing those things is so that I can have the life that I want to have, that I can have the wealth that I want to have, whatever it is that I want to have. So it becomes like a legal system of like loopholes, like that God didn't say I couldn't do that. It just said maybe it was a bad idea, but this God likes it, so I'm going to do that here and this there and all of that. And the Corinthians were treating Christianity the same way. And then you have Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians in the same church. And the Jewish Christians have all the Old Testament law, And the Gentile Christians don't have any of that, and they're just kind of mashing it all together. So it's things like they were arguing about, can we eat food sacrificed to idols? Now, if you read the rest of Corinthians, this is not the big problem this church is facing. Okay, there are some wildly inappropriate things happening in the church. But a big thing was, can you eat meat sacrificed to idols? Why? Because it's about working the system. And so in a market, there'd be an idol in that market, and they would offer all of the food to that idol in a gesture so that it would be blessed as they would sell it. And so Jewish people just wouldn't eat food that was bought at the common markets. They would buy it from Jewish markets. But that would mean that they'd go to someone's house, they'd prepare a meal for them, a really intimate act, and they'd have to be like, hey, was this offered to an idol? Because if it was, I can't eat here. And Paul runs through and says, that's not the point. Like he says, to the Gentiles, I become like a Gentile. To the Jewish people, I become like a Jew. To the weak, I become weak. To the strong, I become strong. I'm all things to all people, because it's about building relationship. It's not about the religious system. It's not about the rules. And I've been in the church for a long time. And I have lost the plot many times along the way, where it just becomes about what's the rules, what's the more rules, what's the loophole, can I do this with my girlfriend or not, can I pursue this type of job or not, can I call this, like, I'm in the missions field, even though it's kind of a sketchy thing, like, job to be involved in. What's the rules for this? And that Paul's basically saying that's not the way that this works. And then at the point that I want to read to you this morning, in verse 24 says, do you not realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. I love so much of this. The line here says, all athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. Anybody remember Big Country Bryant Reeves? Yeah, there you go. If you're not familiar with Big Country Bryant Reeves, you didn't get to live through the period of time we refer to as the Vancouver Grizzlies, the dark days. The Cliffs version of this is that Vancouver got an NBA team. It's a really big deal. We were ready, right? Because we definitely don't riot every time we lose a championship or anything like that. So we decided we were ready. We got this team, and I don't understand the rules for basketball because I've explained to the church before I don't care about professional sports, but there was some sort of thing where we got first crack at some of the best people that were out for grabs. And Big Country was killing it in the college basketball scene. So he's a big rookie. We brought him on. I believe we paid him $6 million for a 3-year rookie contract that could be up for option 2 years in. And the whole idea was he was going to be the superstar we were going to build the team around. And he showed up and he did okay. In the first couple of years, I think it was already a little bit rocky, but they decided, you know what, we're going to re-up him for a 5-year contract with an option to renew and all these things. Big Country, in his 8-year NBA career, made $55 million. $55 million. The last season of the Grizzlies, I think we won 22 games or something like that. And it was not a good team. And that's whatever. But the big thing that will stand out if you were around for that period of time is every off season, Big Country would come back to the training center. He'd come back for the games and things like that. And it would look like some dude just walked in off the street from the local pub. I mean, he would come back. He was a big dude. He would be like 100 pounds heavier than he should have been. And he would roll in and it would just be like, what? And it's just like, yeah, ready to play, guys. I've been training in the off season. Everybody's looking at him like, no, you weren't. Like, training for what? And it turns out he had back problems and he'd always struggled with his weight. So I feel bad for the guy. He's a rancher now. He's way happier. And he just looks like a rancher. He looks like a dad. He wears athletic clothes that he tucks into his pants. And he's a dad and he's so much happier. But the problem with him was that he would show up and he would do poorly. And then he just wouldn't train for the whole offseason and show up and do poorly again. And the people kept asking him did you forget that you're an NBA basketball player? Like, no, I've been training all season. Have you? That doesn't make any sense. And I think that, I don't honestly believe that Big Country ever wanted to be in the NBA. I think he was a big dude that did kind of good in college, and he made his money, bought his ranch, and he'll say, oh, it was great because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to have this ranch. The goal wasn't to be an NBA basketball player. It was to be a rancher. And I guess he trained for that, right? He trained to chase cattle in a pickup truck, and he looks great doing it. I mean, this would be like coming up to the Super Bowl and they're doing an interview with whatever a big quarterback is right now. Again, I don't care about professional sports. If you do, God bless you. And they say, hey, it's the biggest game of your career potentially coming up. How have you been preparing yourself? This is like the top of the top. How have you been training for the Super Bowl? And if his response was, well, you know what? I've been training really hard. Every day, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I train till like 11 o'clock at night, all day, every day. Wow, that's great. What are you doing? Well, every day, I've been practicing my piano. And I've been experimenting with oil paints in order to improve my landscape painting. Like, well, that's not. You're going to play in the Super Bowl. No, I've been training every day. I've been working really hard at this. My piano playing is getting much better, and I'm getting to a level of realism with my painting that I think is remarkable. Like, well, that's not what we're here to talk about. Like, you're not a piano player. You're an athlete. You're not a painter. You're an athlete. We're here to talk about the Super Bowl. This is the greatest moment in a football career. In your painting, yeah, but I'm working really hard. What's the point? The point is, how am I moving in order to train myself for the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? And if you don't know what the point is, as Christians, it ends up that maybe I'm doing all sorts of work for the wrong reasons. And it doesn't pay off. And then you know what happens? I get angry about that. I get bitter. I get jaded. And I start phoning it in. And then maybe sometime down the road, I get really amped up one Sunday. And someone gets me really excited. And I do it again. But maybe I'm not training for the right thing. I'm not training the right way. And it ends up just being a bit of a waste of my time. But there's this moment in this where he says, so I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. This coming year at Riverside, we're going to plant some flags. And one of these flags is a commitment to ensuring that we are a church that pursues what Jesus has for every single one of us. Jesus says in John that I have come so you can have life to the fullest. Not just kind of a miserable experience till you get to heaven, because that's not the goal. The goal isn't to hit the afterlife smelling as little like smoke as possible. That's not the goal. The goal isn't to just kind of live a moral life, an ethical life. That's not the goal. Jesus says I've come so you can have life to the fullest, that you would squeeze every drop of life out of life, that you would be thriving, maybe in the midst of pain, maybe in the midst of struggle, but the type of full life that everyone around us dreams about. And as a church, our goal is that we move strategically, we move intentionally towards that. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to get together and have a little kumbaya session, slap each other on the back and head back out into the world, hoping that maybe something we're doing is abstractly helping us get closer to where it is that God wants us to be. Here's the beautiful thing about this. The Bible says if you seek first the kingdom of God, all these other things will get added to you. You know all the things we talked about? I want to be a better father, better husband, better friend, colleague, son, whatever that is, provider, any of those things. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God. If you become what it is you've been created to be, if you become the embodied Jesus to the world around you, all that stuff gets caught in the wake. So I don't have to play whack-a-mole with like 17, 18, 20 different things that I'm trying to become or the ways that I'm trying to manifest these things. I can just hone in on what am I called to do. I am called to pursue the life that Jesus has for me here. Eternal life means that without time, it doesn't mean it doesn't end. It means it has no beginning. That when I become a Christian, I become a new creation. I start participating now in the life that Jesus has for me. And I'm going to be real with you. I won't want to necessarily say this on Sunday because it'd be difficult to communicate in a way that doesn't offend people. We're an egalitarian church, okay? This means we believe in men and women in ministry. We were founded by a woman. If we had a problem with that, we should just choose a different denomination, okay? But if we're going to move tangibly in this direction, the men of the church need to participate just full rip on this. They need to get right in there. Because if not, if we're playing this game with one of our hands tied behind our backs as a church, then I don't think we're going to realize even half of what it is that God has for us. I don't want to be a church, I don't want to be a man of God that kind of meets the bar and squeaks by. I want to feel like I am getting up every morning, moving the direction I need to move in. I'm out there doing the drills to get me better at the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm showing up Therefore, as a better husband, father, neighbor, whatever it is, I want to serve people not because someone twisted my arm and said, hey, it's a moral thing to do, but I want to serve people because I have taken the power that God has put in me and I have decided I'm going to serve you whether you want me to or not. I'm going to sacrifice for the sake of my wife, my family, my friends, not because I'm forced to, not because I feel bad, because I'm going to do it anyway, because Jesus has put that in me, because he served, because he sacrificed. This is what I believe this year we are going to be centering in. In the fall, we're going to be preaching through what are the things we're doing as a church to become more and more like who Jesus wants us to be. And it's not a list of stuff to do. This is not hustle culture for the church, okay? We're not just going to be like, you're not working hard enough. It's not about how hard you're working. It's about in what direction these things are moving you. It's not about doing more things. It's about knowing that the things that we're doing are done with intention. That's why I love things like this where we gather together and talk about like what the things that really matter. When Clay gets up here and shares about his heart and his struggles, we can move a little bit closer in that direction. I tell you what, if we just show up here and just start talking abstractly about things that aren't connected to anything, I don't know how much that's worth anybody's time. But good news is that's not what's happening here. Good news is that's not what's happening here. So for me personally, I want to hone in on this. I don't want to waste my time. Is that the point of this is not just to get to heaven, because if it was, we can all go home and I'll visit you all on your deathbeds and you'll be good, okay? I mean, we'll just kind of hope you don't die in an accident, because then I don't know what we do with that. We'll do some last rites or something like that, okay? If that was the goal, we wouldn't need any of this. If that was the goal, we'd all be good. But that's not the goal. The goal is that we thrive, that we become more like who Jesus created us to be, more the embodied Christ in every corner of our lives. And that's something that we get to do together. So you're going to hear a bunch of things coming up at the church. You're going to hear us talking about, we're going to take the summer, and the plan right now is we're just going to talk about what does it look like to be a thriving Christian in all the different corners of our life. What does it look like to thrive in our families, thrive in our marriages, thrive as a parent, thrive in our place of work, thrive in all these corners of my lives. What does that look like? Because I want to set that bar like way up here, and then I want to clear it with like margin, because that's what's going to happen if we're pursuing what it is that Jesus has for us. I have gone over time, but I'm a pastor. It's what we do. So I've said a lot of things, and on some level I feel like I struggled with this because I feel like I'm saying a lot of things without really saying anything. I don't have a application for you. I don't have a 3-point thing for you to write down. All I have for you is an encouragement that A, Jesus called us to live life, an abundant life. And B, we won't get there by accident. That I do want to wake up every morning and step with intention and authority and purpose through the good things and the hard things, as we become more like who Jesus created us to be, which is more like him. So I want to pray for you, and I'll bring Brad back up to wrap up our time together. Lord, I thank you that this isn't just a way to pass time. This isn't a legal system that we try and work out the rhythms of yeses and nos, the loopholes. We're not hitting the top 10 or anything like that, Lord. But God, that this is you inviting us into a thriving life, God. That you are inviting us to partner with you right now in this moment. If we became a Christian right now, we'd be partnering with you right now, Lord. That you want to show us what it is you created us to be in the first place. Partners in creation, partners in creating around us, God. And I pray that everyone here, no matter their age, no matter where they're at, that each of us would feel even a glimpse of that glory that you have built into us, your glory, God, that we might reflect you to the world around us. That nobody is a background character, nobody has a side part to play, but that every person has been created to be the embodied Jesus to the world around them. That there is good news to bring to dark places, and that is exactly what you've created us for. So God, I pray you would just guide us, you would draw us closer together, Lord, that in community we would navigate all these things, and that you would keep our eyes on the prize, Lord. That we wouldn't just be shadowboxing, we wouldn't be just wasting our time, but that we would move with intention and purpose and calling, because those are all things that we have from you. In Jesus' name, amen.